Hey friends, Dan Alasso here. I just wanted to briefly update you on the U.S. History 1 web text that I've been working on. I think the project is going pretty well. I've got my students in my actual U.S. History 1 courses using it now and annotating the primary sources in the web text itself rather than in the ebook that I had written previously, and that seems to be going pretty well. I have about 105 primary sources in there right now to match up with the first 8 chapters, first 8 weeks out of this semester, which will total 15. And with the audio clips in each primary passage, that's probably, even just by now, about 17 hours of audio that's in there, plus about 5.5 hours of lecture videos, plus 134 pages of chapter narrative that becomes those lectures with images and maps and, of course, with extensive links. And those links go out to 318 additional pages that provide more information and more images and more maps on topics and ideas that I link to within the narrative. And I'm only halfway done with the first pass through this material. And I have to say that the process of writing these additional pages has been especially interesting and fun for me. Now, I may be more prone than the average person to going on tangents, but it has been a really fun experience of opening rabbit holes that it would be very easy for me to get obsessed and dig into and follow in directions that I think ultimately would be really, really interesting. It'd be really interesting for me, and I think that they would be interesting for readers as well. For example, when I was adding a page to tell my readers a little bit more about Abigail Adams, I verified that when she wrote the letters to her husband John while he was attending the Second Continental Congress, from which I use a passage in a primary source that I call 1775, A Woman at the Front, she was staying at the family farm in Braintree, about 12 miles from British-occupied Boston. I also verified that she was staying there with her 4 children, who ranged in age from 10 to 3. She had had a 5th named Suki, who had died a couple of years earlier, and she would ultimately have one more in 1777, who would be stillborn. But her 4 surviving children were with her at this time in Braintree. And I think that that adds a little bit of interesting detail to set the scene for her letters to John Adams. I also learned some new things about her that I hadn't known. Abigail was a member of the politically connected Quincy family, which meant, among other things, that her first cousin was married to John Hancock. So the Adamses are very well connected, partly by way of Abigail, in the political and social elite of Boston. And finding this out reminded me that I am very interested in tracing families through American history. Similarly, when I was getting a little bit more background for a page describing George Washington's home at Mount Vernon, I discovered that the 8,000-acre plantation on the Potomac had first been acquired by the Washingtons in 1674, the year before Bacon's Rebellion. George's father, Augustus, had built the manor house in 1734, which had then passed to his eldest son, Lawrence, and George had leased the estate from his brother's widow for 5 years, beginning about 1754, the year that he started the French and Indian War, until he inherited it ultimately at her death in 1761. And this also reminded me that it would be interesting to take a closer look at the Washington family's story as well. And I'll be able to do all this and continue adding pages that dig deeper into all of these rabbit holes once I complete the basic web text this semester. Although it's probably going to be growing by several hundred more pages, including about 120 more primary sources just for this U.S. History 1 class, that is really only going to be the skeleton of an American history that I can keep adding to really indefinitely. And I can add a U.S. History 2 basic course module to that as well, and carry the story forward from Reconstruction through the present. And once I do that, I have about 725 pages in a Gilded Age research folder in my main vault, which is private. And I could use a lot of that to add to this project as well. And I think the linking will be really, really interesting. I think especially links of family connections through time could provide a different way for people to understand and also to engage with our past. So I remain very excited about this project. I'm really enjoying doing it. I hope people are finding it interesting, and I hope you found this a little bit interesting. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you very soon with another update. Thanks.